So if we look at this question of nurses and chronic exhaustion, there is the question there of how many nurses does this affect? Is it really an issue at all? And if we look at the statistics, there is no evidence really to suggest that there is a particular problem. But that's not because of a lack of evidence, but it's because nobody's actually looking at this at all. So when I studied for my thesis, one of the first things I had to do was to establish how many nurses are there and how many are leaving. And we couldn't even answer that one. There is no set of statistics which even tells us how many nurses there are, because the statistics that are counted tend to double count. So it will count nurses on different parts of the register twice. And also it doesn't reflect who's actually practicing and who might actually have stopped practicing, but is not being asked to re-register for several years. And so there's just this big gaping hole really in our understanding of nursing. And when you carry that forward onto nurses' health and well-being, it's even more apparent. So we just don't know. It's been interesting recently to look at long COVID, because that really has, I think, freaked the powers that be within the NHS and government and those sorts of circles as to, oh my goodness, we think suddenly we've got a large part of the workforce who are stuck at home, who are not getting better, that we don't have any answers for, but we don't know the scale of the problem. So there have been calls to actually count better for long COVID, but still the statistics are not there. So there was a panorama programme at the beginning of 2023 which looked into this a little bit more, and it's extrapolated from the data that has been collected in Northern Ireland and in Scotland, where the suggestion is that 0.6% of the whole workforce, that's all healthcare workers, are currently struggling with long COVID and unable to work. And that then extrapolated would mean about 10,000 people across the UK. Now that doesn't drill down into how many people are nurses. And I would say at this point, I'm focusing on nurses because I'm a nurse. That's what I understand. But I hope that an awful lot of what I say today will resonate for people who are also in other healthcare professions, but also in social work and in education. I think there are an awful lot of parallels. And I think you might well have some aha moments through just listening to what the nursing perspective is. So if we don't know the actual numbers, why is it that I'm convinced that there is a problem here that we need to understand? Well, that's based in my understanding and what I've seen by working through the Chrysalis Effect. And during the COVID, Elaine introduced the coffee mornings, which I think were absolutely fantastic step forward, where we could actually talk face to face for the first time and not just through the Facebook forum. And you would find if somebody mentioned they were a nurse, then other people would say, yeah, me too, me too. And you began to recognize just how many of us are in that kind of background. But also there's a logic to it. So beginning to understand those patterns and that ME profile, which I'll come to shortly, there is an enormous logic of thinking of the overlap, how much that ME profile actually describes the nursing identity and what brings people into the caring profession. So you would expect that there would be a particular problem in those groups. If you found this video helpful, please do click on like below and subscribe to my channel. You might also like to hop across using the links to my Facebook or LinkedIn pages where you'll find much more content.